Well, welcome to this special feature on Leave a Legacy, an organization that's trying to help Oakland County and Southeast Michigan residents realize the impact that they have to charities through planned gifts. Now in Michigan, we mostly give to charities regularly during our lives. A planned gift, on the other hand, is a gift that goes on after our lifetime. So we're going to get to that. We're going to want to talk about that. I'm Bob Alexander. I am a longtime Waterford resident. I'm the Director of Development at Angela Hospice, and I'm a volunteer for Leave a Legacy of Southeast Michigan. I am joined by two bright people having to do with planned gifts. Both Rebecca Herr and Bill Winkler are here with me. Now, Rebecca is a trust advisor with Northern Trust. You've been at that kind of thing for 11 years. Right. That sounds like fun. You must know what you're talking about at that point. Bill is a partner with Kavanaugh, Winkler Associates. He has been a long time associated with philanthropic efforts throughout Southeast Michigan. Planned gifts in the School of Medicine at Wayne State University for 10 years. Bill was in the restaurant business for 20 years, so we might have eaten your food. Actually.
I think you probably did. That's why you look so healthy.
That's good to know. You've been involved with the Gleaners Community Food Bank and the Food Bank of Oakland County, and you are the current president of the Planned Giving Roundtable of Southeast Michigan.
That's correct. Which
is very cool. They're the umbrella organization that oversees the Leave a Legacy group. So Bill is our captain, my captain. One of those things. What we want to do is first sort of create some principles so that you understand what we're doing and what we're not doing. One of the principles of Leave a Legacy is that we do not advocate for any one organization or agency in particular. What we do advocate for is the idea of planned giving, of the principle of charitable giving. It's the thing that we're interested in, and that's not selling a product, that's selling an idea to the community at large. The second thing that I want to do before we get sort of underway in planned giving talk is just to talk about charitable giving itself in general in the community. So I want to talk about the importance or the impact of charitable giving as we live and breathe right now. Rebecca, do you have any sort of insight, just some thoughts about that in general? What does charitable giving do to a community in general?
Sure. Well, I think charitable giving, it helps the community, of course, with dollars and that type of thing, but charitable giving is really more. It's an impact to the community, to the nonprofit, to the family, to the individual that's creating the gift. And it really is an equalizer, if you will, from people who are wealthy down to people of more modest means, where they can make an impact and have some meaning with their family and lead with their values.
Right. I'm very interested in exploring that. While we talk about this, I want to sort of see what that even playing field looks like. Sure. Because so many people think about charitable giving as though, in the big sense, that's the big guy's idea. That's what right. really wealthy people do, right. and it's not so much what we do. But I kind of want to counter that and build maybe to you just the idea of how charitable are people? I mean, what's the nature or the size of charity, not in dollars, but in participation in the state of Michigan even?
Well, it's kind of interesting because in the state of Michigan, a recent survey that was done by Michigan State University gave us some really valuable data on what charitable giving is all about in the state of Michigan. Upwards to 82% of the people in our state throughout their lifetime support a vast array of charitable organizations throughout the state. Their churches, the places of worship, yep. they support those entities. Sure. The Cancer Foundation, juvenile diabetes. There's a whole plethora of nonprofits that 82% of the people in Michigan support. That is a strong effort that says something about the citizens of the state and how they feel about these charitable organizations and the incredibly valuable work that those organizations do.
Yeah.
And why they want to see those organizations succeed in their efforts.
Right, and that's kind of what I want to sort of riff on that a little bit more. why are they charitable? I mean, what motivates them? Nobody's twisting their arm, nobody's sort of forcing it. I mean, that's why it's called charity, right? It comes from the heart, but what are those motivations by your experience?
Well, I think for me, Northern Trust is a private wealth management firm, so we work with high net worth individuals. And to go back to what you were just mentioning is, I don't want people to think that philanthropy and charity is just for rich people or older people. I think everybody can lead with their values and live their legacy during their lifetime. But with me, with my client base, they're not even led by tax efficiencies or deductions, or that's not it at all. They want to make a great impact, and a lot of times they want to make gifts during their lifetime so they can see the impact, but certainly planning within their trust documents and their wills is a really essential part for being a wealth management advisor to help them plan what will happen to their assets later in life as well.
Right. I want to get to that. I want to talk about that in a moment, but I still kind of want to wander around in this wading pool of motivations. But I feel like that is something that's characteristic of us, right? I mean, I give to things, you give to things undoubtedly. Most of you, if it's 82%, most of you are giving to things, and it would be almost like, well, why are you giving to things? Because I want to keep that nugget of truth as to the motivation that we carry on through our lives. And so many of us are giving because we've been affected by a lot of the organizations, or we believe in them. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think one of the prime motivators is folks that have been, let's just take an example. One of the biggest organizations, nonprofit organizations throughout the state is the ARC, and the ARC deals with developmentally disabled, intellectually impaired children and adults. The ARC does absolutely wonderful things in terms of advocacy for those folks, one of the most vulnerable of the populations in this state, to make sure that they have inclusion. Now, there are a lot of folks whose families have been touched by that. Either you are personally touched by that because you have a child that has been affected by either developmental issues or intellectually impaired. And so there's a strong connection between you and what the ARC does and what it will do through the entire life of your child. As your child moves into adulthood, that organization is going to be there to help you make sure that your child has access to the world that they can possibly get into. And that's an important factor. And so that's one of the prime motivators for a lot of folks. You may have a grandson, or you may have a son who's been affected by juvenile diabetes. And so you know the kind of research that's been done there and how that research has helped your child through the course of his or her lifetime. And that's the stuff that connects people to those organizations. And I believe that that's the prime motivator for a lot of folks to support those organizations financially, because they know, those people know that after they're gone, juvenile diabetes doesn't end. Intellectually impaired children are still going to be born 20 years from now, 30 years from now. And there need to be organizations in place that can deliver the kinds of services to those folks that needs to be delivered. And that's why you support those organizations.
And that's why it's so important to have good advisors to help people plan for their, not only during their lifetime, but also when they pass away, to make sure that they continue to support these really important organizations in their community.
I think that those support motives are the ones that really sort of, I don't know, they define us as human beings. They're the things that where we have compassion for people who either are like us, or people who are unlike us, who need some advantage, they need some assistance, or they need some kind of the influence of some benevolent organization that does a great job, and they only stand because they're supported by the community. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like I think if there weren't benevolent organizations, it'd be one of those "It's a Wonderful Life" things where all of a sudden, so many things that we consider normative in our society would go missing.
Would no longer exist.
They wouldn't even exist. And they exist because we're philanthropic, because we're donating, we're charitable as a living people.
Sure.
Let me just talk for a moment, because I know we're going to talk about just a little bit on some vehicles as to how people contribute, how people donate. And I think that most of us in our homes and in our lives know the way that we contribute are pretty basic stuff. I mean, we may put dollar bills in a red kettle, or we may send a check, or we may write do a credit card of some kind to an organization or agency. But what other vehicles for a living person do you know of that kind of exist? I mean, are you interested in chatting about that for a second?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So what are you familiar with in terms of what living regular people might do aside from the way that we know we donate?
You want to hit it, or do you want me to? Go ahead, you can start.
Well, I'll say, not to get into technical, charitable trust and all those different vehicles.
Yeah, some of them are pretty elaborate.
Let's do the interpolated kind of. No, don't do it. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, we want just regular words.
So besides gifting cash, of course, and writing a check and putting in your credit card, it can be really powerful to gift a stock or stocks that have low basis, which means they've grown a lot in value.
Right, so they were bought at low value, and they grew.
They've grown.
Now they're worth a bunch more.
You can gift a charity the stock instead of writing the check. All good things for everybody, tax-wise and that type of thing. Also, if you have an IRA and you're 70 and a half and you have to take that required minimum distribution, you have the ability to gift direct from your IRA to a charity.
Right.
And you get some really good tax benefits for that too.
Right. There are some great ones. I know we've benefited at Angela Hospice. We've benefited by people who have given us these interesting donations, and it's not a check, and it's not, but it's wonderful for them, and it's wonderful for us. So there are some really interesting things that we do as a community, or can do, that I think most of us probably don't know about unless we're in that industry. Right. But it's something worth knowing about, or worth learning about, especially if you're somebody who has stock or has an IRA and is required to have a minimum required distribution of some kind. You want to say something?
Yeah, I do.
Like it?
Yeah. One of the most convenient ways that people can support charities, and for those people that do support charities, like us, you do that through your will. You have a will created, and in that will, you simply state what percentage or dollar amount out of your estate.
Right.
And a lot of people don't even think they have estates, but in fact, many people who don't think that really do.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you can make you can put that in your will. You can do a bequest, and specify through your bequest how much money will go to that charity that you want to support. Those are simple ways to do it. The other kinds of ways to do it, these kinds of financial instruments, are in many instances easily accessible and very beneficial, not only to the charitable organization that you want to pass this money on to, but to your family, like split interest gifts. Can you talk about split interest?
Sure. So, and again, we can get as technical.
No.
But with split interest gifts, you can have a certain amount during your lifetime go to you as the grantor, which is the person who kind of creates this instrument, and then upon a certain amount of time or upon your passing, a portion or the remainder goes to a charity or to your family. There's also pools of funds called the donor advised fund that multiple people can input and choose a charity to go thereafter. You can even name your life insurance policy to go directly to a charity. So there's many vehicles that are accessible. They don't have to be complicated. There's lots of advisors through Leave a Legacy that can really help people understand what their options are and what might be the most appropriate way for them to really reach their goal and speak to their priorities.
Let me talk about again some of those. Let's talk about some of those core goals. Let's back up a couple more steps, and with that in knowledge, with that awareness, and this is something that I think that so many of us don't realize. Like you had said, Bill, that you have an estate. I mean, we're buying groceries. We're just sort of living our lives. Yeah. We don't think of ourselves as possessors of an estate. And I think that even the whole idea of philanthropy, this is one of my pet loves actually, is that the whole idea of philanthropy does not exclude people who are modest means
Sure.
people. We think of philanthropists, those individuals, as Bill Gates and Carnegie and Warren Buffett, and we think, okay, well, they're philanthropists.
They can afford to do it.
They can afford to
Right.
do it, and they're thinking beyond their life, and they're doing all the rest of that stuff. So, but the fact is that even just the word philanthropist simply means someone who loves people. It doesn't say a rich person who loves people or somebody with lots of stocks who loves people.
Right.
It's just someone who cares for people, and they show that through their charity. That's where they get to unilaterally, individually decide how they're going to benefit or bless somebody. Let me go to a statistic, because to me, part of what we're talking about is the different vehicles and things that can be done and such in terms of planned giving. But how many, of the 82% number, what happens in Michigan or wherever in terms of planned gifts? We know that as living donors and as living charitable contributors, we give to the tune of about 82% of us. Mm-hmm. What happens in after the life type gifts?
Well, another one of the remarkable statistics that came out of that Michigan State survey was, along with the 82% of us as citizens that contribute to these wonderful nonprofits, about 9% of us actually include those same charities in our wills or trusts through bequests. And that was a significant number, from 82 to 9. And so the question is, why did that happen?
Right.
How come people forget to continue to support or don't think about continuing to support that organization or have a knowledge of how that could possibly happen?
Right, because we've established that we're charitable.
Right.
By nature, we're charitable.
Absolutely.
But at some point, there's this wall of statistics that hits, and for some reason, are we no longer charitable? I don't think that our nature changes at that point. I think our knowledge changes at that point, or our awareness of things change at that point.
And I also think there can be a psychology behind talking about wills and trusts and what happens upon our demise. It's a tough conversation to have sometimes.
Hey, I work for a hospice.
Sure,
I totally understand
you understand.
that. Yeah.
And not having a plan is a plan. And
right.
it's probably not the one most of us would want.
It's the government's plan.
It's the government's plan.
That's what that plan is.
So
The one you chose.
They'll choose
it's
it
the
for you.
default plan that might not be,
Right.
what we would want to see, how we would want our estates to be
Exactly.
handled, even if we, in our minds, don't think we have an estate. It's, we still have assets, and we want them to serve a purpose. That's what Leave a Legacy really helps people accomplish.
Right. I agree with you. I think that, because that is sort of our bailiwick. As Leave a Legacy, our desire is for people to be aware of the fact that this even exists. Not that the disparity exists, but because of the disparity, that exists an opportunity for people to carry on their nature and their desires and their benevolence to the organizations that they now support beyond their lifetimes.
Yeah, I think I remember when I first got into doing development work, and actually I was in the restaurant business, and I was raising money for the issue of hunger.
Yep.
And I really didn't understand what that whole thing was about in terms of like food banks. And, but we did a lot of work in the restaurant to raise a lot of money for that particular issue.
Right.
And that was, I think, the thing that kind of drew me into what this whole area of philanthropic giving is all about, and supporting those organizations that do this wonderful work. It's kind of mission driven, Eventually, I think what happened with me is that it's like a virus, and it gets implanted.
In the best possible way.
Yeah, the nicest virus ever.
Planted in you,
Right.
and you can't find where it's at, but it just keeps driving you forward. Like over the years, I've had an opportunity to participate in a lot of different organizations and try to help a lot of different organizations. It's always I always tell people, when people ask me if I can help them do something, and I'm sure a lot of people that work in this area do the same thing, because it's part of your nature. That's the virus.
Right.
Somebody says, I got an issue here. Do you think you might be able to help me with? And I look at my life and my schedule and everything, and I think to myself, I really don't have the time to do that.
No.
And I start to form that word no. But what comes out of my mouth was, I'm sure I could probably help you out here. Not a problem, right?
Yeah.
But I think it becomes part of your nature. And you've said it. I mean, it is part of what our nature is all about, There are so many wonderful comments by poets that talk about paying it forward.
Yeah.
Sure.
By throwing something out there, and you never know who it's going to affect and when it's going to affect them and at what point in their life it's going to affect them.
Right.
And I think that that's wonderfully important,
Sure.
To create a quality of life experience for everybody.
I hear you. I think that some of what happens when people think about the planned giving, again, planned giving is gifts that are after your lifetime. We're giving all the time. I'm going to say 82% of us are philanthropists now, and for some reason, only 9% of us are philanthropists afterward. But I think part of it is, maybe it's wanting the conversation, not wanting to have the conversation about after our lives, but I think it's valid to have a conversation about what's important to us.
Sure.
With our friends, with anybody who we might use as a financial advisor, and even that's a daunting idea for a lot of people, that they would need a financial advisor. So that's why I kind of want to go back again. Let's just cover that ground one more time about the things that are the easy on-ramps to moving that 9% up to more like what it really what our nature really is, what our hearts are. What are those easiest ways for people to consider that?
Well, I would say, to your point, in your will.
Okay.
A will is the most basic
Yep.
document for what you want to have happen
Yes.
to your assets, your personal property.
Right.
Put it in your will. You can ask the charity that is near and dear to your heart. They will have wonderful people to help you kind of create that planned gift. You can go to the Leave a Legacy website. You
Yep.
can ask your financial advisor.
Right.
Or you can, what I like to suggest people do is, every year in January, when you're kind of making your New Year's resolutions,
Okay.
have a conversation with your family and say, what do we feel passionate about?
Right.
You can pick a different charity each year. You can pick a different organization. You can talk to your church, and there's lots of resources out there. I would say at the very basic, go to the Leave a Legacy website. There's tons of information out there.
Right.
There's, volunteer members such as us who
Sure.
our names are out there. But in your will, call your
Right, and even if you have a will,
charity.
have a will.
Have a will. Please have a will.
Please have a will. But even in your will, if you have a will, you can add onto your will with a codicil.
Codicil.
Right.
You simply write, and I want this something or whatever,
Right.
if it's a dollar amount, if it's a percentage amount, if it's whatever it might be.
Sure, it could say stock.
It
You
could
can
say-
say.
it could say
But
any-
and I want to.
right.
I want to just reiterate. It's not all or nothing.
Right.
It's not. Upon my passing, I want to take care of my family.
Right.
It doesn't. It's not that way. It can
Right.
be. You want a percentage to go to charity. You can
Yep.
say, I want an X amount of dollars to go to charity. It
Right.
doesn't have to be a detriment to your family. It
No.
can be a way to have them get engaged and passionate about what us as philanthropists are charitable about during our lifetime.
Anecdotally, I've found that to be exactly the case, that there are times when we receive a donation from a person's estate, and frankly, a family member comes to us with a big smile on their face going like, I know you guys were important
Yes.
to my aunt or to my mom, and she wanted you to have this, and they love carrying out her
It's
design.
connectivity.
It's very connectivity. It's very much like that. It's not as though she's not providing for them. She's providing for them the same way she's providing for them during her life. It's the charity doesn't become the big thing at the end. It's just the same piece of your life, like it is while you're living.
Let me. Would it be fair to say that when let's just hypothetically say a family comes in to talk to you, husband, wife, they want to talk to you about setting up something for the future for their children. And in the course of that, your interaction with them, is it fair to assume that you strive through the way you dialogue with them to find out what are those important things in their life
Of course.
now and moving forward, so that you can help them craft what that plan would look like?
Of course.
Okay.
And that goes back to when I said assets serving a purpose
Yeah.
and leading with your values. That's a conversation that wealth advisors would have with all of their clients to
Right.
make sure not only are we being good stewards of their assets and investing them properly, but also having a meaningful conversation so that we understand we can help them achieve their goals. And the only way to know what their goals are is by having a really good conversation.
Have them tell you.
You know,
Yeah.
but to also
Because
ask.
the mind reading thing
It's
doesn't
the
work
mind
sometimes.
reading thing doesn't work. Waiting for somebody to say, "Hey, by the way, there's a
Right.
charity I've been hesitant about
Yeah.
supporting, but I really feel passionate
Right.
about it."
Right.
Sometimes it's just not being afraid to ask
Right.
questions.
Right.
And giving pause and giving space to somebody to actually answer.
You and I were talking yesterday or a couple days ago, and you said that there was something you remembered or you had in mind of a family or a community.
Yes.
I mean, just how the benefit sort of built itself around the situation. What was
Sure.
that?
So we had a client who wanted to make an anonymous gift, but she wanted it to be meaningful. And at first, she was thinking about kind of spreading her wealth amongst many, very deserving charities. And then after some soul searching and conversations, and that goes back to actually asking the question and, giving some space to having somebody answer, she decided she was going to make one very large, impactful gift. And of course, not everybody has these means, but we can still make an impact regardless of the dollars. And we got a hold of the charity to notify them of the gift Christmas Eve.
Oh,
And
There's a nice present for you.
Right. And not only did it impact the client, she was,
Right.
She made the gift during her lifetime. She got to see the impact
Yes.
to the nonprofit, which is
Right.
really important.
Because they were made aware of it.
They were made aware.
Right.
The gift, took place. It was of stock.
Right.
Took place before the year end. The charity could, of course, not have been more thrilled.
Right.
But then she was able to see what they used
Right.
those dollars for, and able to see that they were such good stewards of this large, impactful gift that she made. And I think it meant more to her to be able to see
Right.
what impact it had versus the significance of the gift.
Right.
The stories abound when you work in development,
Yes,
and
they
when
do.
you work with folks that want to have an impact.
Right.
I can remember talking to a gentleman who had become fairly successful, and his parents were immigrants, and they had worked 2 jobs. Both parents worked. They supported him and his 2 brothers, and they helped them get an education and to provide a better life for their families as they move forward. And this fellow wanted to create a gift that would help students, okay? And so I asked him what he wanted to, as we were talking, I said, well, what do you want what do you want the name of this thing to be? Would it be
Right.
Peter, whatever, endowed whatever? And he said, he said, and so because he had talked so much about his parents, I said, do you think it would be all right if you included your parents in this? Because you really have talked a lot about how, if it wasn't for your parents, you wouldn't be here having this conversation with me.
Yeah.
And as soon as I said that, you could see the tears well up in his eyes. He said, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to name this gift after my parents.
Right.
My name doesn't have to be on it.
You
Right.
gave him a gift by saying that. You did.
And it's
Oh, yeah.
amazing how many times that happens.
Yeah.
And that's when, if you're paying attention and you're listening, because we, like you said, we are all charitable by
We are.
nature
We are.
at base,
We are.
And if you can just hear that,
Yep.
it really
Yeah.
unleashes a lot of stuff. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, and those stories are so wonderful, because they represent what the person themselves are doing to give, but they are also a testimonial to their families, to the people who love them, to the people who care about them. I'm just saying they see the delight and the meaningfulness of that experience in their own eyes.
his
Well,
parents gave him a legacy gift.
They did.
Sure.
And he gave that legacy gift
In their
to
name.
future
And
generations.
to others.
In their honor.
Exactly.
It's
I
about
love
leading
that.
with money,
Yeah.
but ultimately it's affecting your heart
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
and the hearts of others.
Yeah.
Well, we hope we've planted some ideas. We hope that we've at least demystified philanthropy and helped you realize that probably you are a philanthropist already, but that it's definitely worth considering the fact that that philanthropy has so much potential to go beyond your lifetime, whether whatever organization it affects. Entirely, it's personal and it's very meaningful. We hope that we've sort of broken through that particular idea. And if you want more information, Rebecca kept mentioning the website, so I'm going to mention it again for you. There is a website you can look at. Again, we're not looking for business, we're looking to disseminate information. So you can try this, log on to this. It's at www, it's a long bunch, .leavealegacysoutheastmichigan.org. So it's www.leavealegacysoutheastmichigan.org. And we also do have a phone number. Yes, we are in modern times, so you can get a hold of us by phone also. The number is 888-826-7900. And there are all sorts of people who do know about philanthropy and wealth issues and are happy to just give you references and help you begin to sort through that whole idea and turn your philanthropy into something that goes beyond your lifetime. That's a legacy. That's leaving a legacy, and we couldn't be happier if you opted to do that. So we're hopeful that that was helpful for you, and thank you very much for taking the time to listen through this, and we invite you to connect with us through either of those means. And otherwise, want to say goodbye. I'm Bob Alexander. I'll see you around town.